Welcome. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're the Brothers-in-law. Those of you who are new to the channel, I am Corey, and this is my homeboy from another mother, Mr. Michael Bradley, and he and I are both prior law enforcement police officers. I'm here in the state of Virginia, former Virginia State Trooper, and Mike is a retired Pleasanton, California police officer, 26 years, and both Mike and I are also prior military. I'm retired Navy, and Mike served 6 years in the Army. And we're both originally from Canton, Ohio. So after all these years, he and I still remain the best of friends. And so we had this YouTube channel here talk about policing in our communities and how we break down police involved shooting videos and break it down so that we give our viewers an understanding of what goes on inside the mind of a police officer when they are involved in these shootings. And with that being said, welcome, Mike.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, it's good to be back. We got a good show for everybody lined up. Hey, Tone, I see you. Hey, Stacy, I see you on here. We got a good little show to talk about. You know, sometimes cops make mistakes, and we're gonna get into it.
Yeah, you know, and this is if you watched our show last week, where we talked about a female cop in Columbus, Ohio, who utilized her training the proper way to de-escalate a situation. You see the comparison in the two tonight. So when this video popped up on one of my news feeds, I said, "Oh man, Mike, we got to talk about this because this is just total opposite of what we were talking about in last week's video." You know, so we'll talk about that. But before we get into it, man, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're on YouTube and you're watching us over on Facebook, go ahead and throw some hearts up on there and share this out to all your friends and family, because this is a very difficult one to talk about. This young man was 17 years old. This shooting occurred in San Antonio, Texas, back on October the 2nd of this year. I think it hit the mainstream media. I think I saw it on the 5th. And I put a little watch on it.
It's about the time I saw it.
5th. Yeah, it put a little ticker out there to kind of watch the story on this to see how it progressed. And so you want to set it up, Mike? You want me to go ahead and set it up?
Yeah, it's my understanding this officer was responding to a scene. I think it was a fast food restaurant or something along
McDonald.
It was another call for service while he was in this area, and I guess he was able to solve this call for service, but he happened to see this vehicle in the parking lot that was unrelated to this call, the original call. But he recognized this vehicle as possibly having fled him at a time before this call. So
I think it was like a week before.
Yeah, about a week before, and that's where this officer initiates contact with this vehicle with that in mind. So just for clarification, this vehicle had nothing to do with the reason why the officer was there, which is fine. You know what I'm saying? The officer handled the original call. I guess that call was squashed or was handled, and that was the end of that. And he noticed this car in the parking lot because of a prior contact he had with this car in the past. And that's all I'm gonna say on that.
Yeah, and so it is graphic, and as usual, you know, Mike and I will break it down to see what went wrong, what possibly training deficiencies took place in here, and what could be done to mitigate for something like this not to happen again. So be cautious of this. Again, this is graphic. So if you have sensitive eyes, you might want to turn it. But we'll go ahead and get into it. And as usual, we'll break it down. We'll stop it if need be to discuss a certain portion of it and keep it rolling.
And feel free to ask your questions, make your comments. We love to address those. You know, we love those questions and comments. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
$31.61. Hey, can you start me one more? I got a vehicle over here that fled from me the other day. It's in the parking lot.
Yeah, more. Somebody else with it. There you go. Enter that way over there with 3161. Maybe up of 11 to the 100 point over to the McDonald. Hey, 3161, you want them already cooked?
10-4. License plate.
I just blurted out because they didn't want to read his license plate, but it picked back up here.
Get out of the car.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired!
So I'm gonna back it up real quick.
Okay.
And we'll start dissecting it here. So at this point, like you were saying, Mike, this is where he recognizes the vehicle from the article I read from like a week before. I guess he might have had some type of interaction with this vehicle. So he makes his approach. Nothing wrong. Calls her back up. Nothing wrong with that. The problem I have is when he gets there.
I got a vehicle over here that fled from me the other day. It's in the parking lot.
He immediately
Somebody else with it.
goes in
There you
and
go. Enter that way over there with 3161.
I'm trying not to talk over him.
Hey, 3161, you want them already cooked?
10-4. License plate.
So he's making his approach over there. That's not a problem, right? The problem I have is right away, he didn't even try to identify himself, just go and just open the kid's door. I would never have done that. Would you, Mike?
No, I wouldn't have done that. Matter of fact, I may not have even made contact with the car unless I thought that I had no choice because it was about to leave. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the only reason I would have waited because, well, number one, I don't want the car to drive off because, as he said, he had gotten into a vehicle pursuit with this car a week before. So obviously, I don't want to get into a vehicle pursuit again if I can help it. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I wouldn't have contacted him. I probably would have waited for cover and contacted him with a cover officer and the primary contact officer, you know, the proper way, and do it that way. He, like you say, Corey, he just went up, opened the door. Yeah, the kid, I'm sure, knew who he was as far as him being a police officer, because I'm sure he's fully dressed in a full police uniform. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
I think the kid probably got scared or whatever, or didn't want to be caught and decided to drive off. But people will ask, Corey, well, how did this officer know that this is the vehicle that he was involved with the pursuit in last week? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of BMWs around. How did he know that? Well, I'm imagining that the officer looked at the plate, number one, and realized that, well, that's the same plate that I was in a vehicle pursuit in last time. And keep in mind, also understand that this license plate that was being attached to the car did not belong to that particular car. That was my understanding when I first saw this video. So those are two red flags that I don't have any problem with this officer having reason to stop this person, obviously. But I'm not crazy on how he did it.
Right. I don't think I think my problem started off with the approach. Now I agree with you on the point that I would have probably waited to have cover there in case he did try to flee. But, you know, now at this point, you just open the door. Yeah, the young man probably was startled. I mean, you can look at his face right there, and he's like, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, what's going on? Now, you're under assumption. Do you even know that was the driver? You might have had the car. Car don't mean nothing. It does. But the fact of the matter is, who was sitting in the seat?
True.
Right? If that wasn't, what if this was the kids, the daddy that fled the police? Right? He wasn't the operator of the vehicle at the time of the incident with the police officer.
All
So
good
this
point.
kid don't know what's going on.
True.
He don't know what's going on, and so he's panicking. He may be under the assumption that what everybody else operates under. Hey, police, they're gonna kill me, and he just takes off. Right now, where does the training come in is wrong, because now the kid freaks out and now he drives off, as we saw. Right, the young man has the door open. As he backs out, he hits the police officer with the car door. Now, can you hit him with an assault? Yeah, against an officer? Yeah, you could, but that is not deadly force.
No.
That's a call for no deadly force.
But see,
where Mike, where in this now?
I know where you're going with this. That's why I'm laughing.
As an officer, you go ahead. I'm just make this point, and then you, as an officer, I'm looking at his hands. I see he got a cheeseburger in his left hand. I can't really make out where his right hand is, but this officer has better visibility of the situation than we do because he's there. I don't see a weapon, but he couldn't have no weapon, and it comes out that he never did have a weapon. He puts the car. I think he drops it. Hold on, we'll just play it again, real quick, because I think he
get out of the car.
You never. He drops the burger and puts both hands on the steering wheel.
After the officer says get out of the car? Does he say something after that in response before he pulls out, though? Before he backs the car up?
See.
I couldn't quite catch if he said something, which
he did mumble something.
He said something. It sounded like. Now keep in mind, folks, we know you got our viewers know where we going. We just ain't got there yet, but we're gonna get to it. We're just breaking it down moment by moment in order. That's all. Okay.
I think I went too far.
See, I think when he says,
let's see what he says.
All right. Does he say why or what?
That's why I think he said. I thought he said, hold on.
Get out of the car.
Yeah, I think he says why.
Okay. All right.
And then that's when he proceeds to back up.
Not to minimize the end result here, but young men, when you get pulled over or when an officer opens the door and tells you to get out, don't panic, don't take off, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what do we say, right, Corey? You don't know what kind of officer you are confronted with. You don't know how this officer is going to react to what you are doing. So what you need to do is keep your hands visible so they can see them. Do not try to take off on this car. Now, I believe that this kid knew he was a cop. I believe this kid knew something was going on. If he got into a vehicle chase the week before, it's likely that this kid was trying to run again. Now, that being said, Corey, at first, that officer didn't know who the driver was. Could have been his dad last week. But based on this kid's actions, one of two things. Either he was completely innocent and really shocked and scared and panicked and didn't know what to do. So his first thought was to take off, or he was the driver in the pursuit a week ago and decided to take off again because he didn't want to get caught and for whatever reason. Okay. Now, Corey, you mentioned something about the door hitting the officer when he backed up, and that's not deadly force. And I agree with you. I agree with you completely, folks. Back in the day, I think there was a kind of a thing where if you were in a car and you drove towards an officer or something to that effect where it caused that officer to fear for their safety in that car, and they decide to use deadly force to shoot you. That has slightly changed out here in California, or I should say it has been clarified a little bit more in California, where if you can move out of the way, okay, if you could jump to the right or left, you can't use deadly force on them and try to say that they tried to run you over, because you could clearly simply move out of the way. But you can't stand in the middle of the road. I'm just using this as an exaggerated example. You can't stand in the middle of the road as the car's coming at you and not move and then pull your gun out and start shooting the driver because he ain't stopping. You see what I'm saying, Corey?
That you're 100% right, because that's how we were trained in the academy. You can't just start shooting all willy-nilly into a vehicle. Now, unless it has to be life-threatening, or it must be in a situation where you cannot get out the way, or that car is making a beeline to another individual standing in the road, or doing something deadly with that vehicle, just them fleeing, going off. Now, and as you saw, let me back up, because you made a really good point, and this is the premise behind our show is to talk about staying calm, right? You mentioned that, if you, to the young folks, when this happens to you, to don't run, right? We preach on here to stay calm, comply, answer questions, listen, and move on. I think that young man, if he should have known, all right, you know what, game's up. I agree with you that he recognized that officer as a police officer. How? By being in uniform today, displaying the badge of authority. So he recognized that, right? But I think he freaked out, right? Maybe, and we're speculating, folks. We're speculating. Maybe he was that driver in the previous incident with this officer, and thought he could get away again. Now, we all like to say, we try to get into the mindset of the officer to give the viewers what we think happened. Like you said, Mike, he was hit with the door. That officer, now, he has only been on the force, maybe he might have been on the force about a year. And so now we have to look at his training, right? We had to see what he knew. Did he take that being hit by the door as an assault? As, hey, I'm authorized now to use deadly force? Clearly, he missed that whole training of deadly force when deadly force is authorized.
Not only that,
he missed that training.
A lot of that deadly force training that we speak of is it's a lot of common sense too. You know what I'm saying? Could he have moved out of the way of that car? Could he have backed up? The kid clearly was not trying to hit him with the car, so we can squash that. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And the kid was clearly backing up out of the space, which the door incidentally hit the officer. It may not even hit the officer that much, but it probably made some kind of contact. And the kid sped off in the opposite direction. So in this situation, Corey,
Yeah.
I don't see anything that if I was the officer, I don't see anything in this situation that would cause me to perceive this as a deadly threat to where I'm shooting, I'm firing rounds off into this vehicle, especially after the vehicle is driving away. I'm just popping off rounds in the vehicle. No, I'm not doing. I'm not doing that. There's nothing here that indicates that would be my response. You?
Your life is not in danger. You I'm trying to think of what would be a good reason to one, pull your service weapon out. If anything, I would have tried to snatch him out the car, uh, and not let him drive off. But that would have been the young me. The old me would just be like, "Well, dude, I know who you are. You're in this seat. I know the address of this vehicle. I just go get a couple warrants, and I'll come and arrest you. I'll come to your daddy's house and arrest you, or whatever." But at this point, he has no valid reason to even pull his service weapon out, and then let alone shoot it.
Definitely not shoot it. I mean, pulling it out is always a gray area for me. You know what I'm saying? I can see not pulling it out, but I can also see pulling it out. Nighttime, you believe this car is the same car that fled from you already. You don't know what you're getting ready to encounter. But then in that case, if I'm pulling my service weapon out, why wouldn't I wait for a cover unit before I make contact in the first place? You see what I'm saying? If I felt it was serious enough to have my weapon out, I'm going to wait for my cover unit, and so that we got an approach on both sides of the vehicle, and we can clearly see. I'm going to light that vehicle. You know how we do it, lighting that vehicle up with every light in the book, right? And maybe even pull you out at a high-risk stop. Contact. It depends. If I have my service weapon out, it's definitely an elevated contact. You know what I mean? But definitely not in a situation where he should have fired rounds off in this car. You know what I'm saying? I just don't see that. I don't see the reasoning in that. I don't see, like I said, I don't see anything that would be indicative of me having that kind of response. You know?
Yeah, I'm not. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I don't think it was. I wouldn't have pulled my weapon. That's just me. I mean, again, at this point, you know everything you know about this individual. So why even go to that level? You've already identified that he didn't have a weapon in his hands because he ended up dropping his cheeseburger and putting both hands on the steering wheel to be able to back the car out and take off. At this point, there was no reason to pull the weapon because he was fleeing from you. Now it'd have been different if he would have backed out and then started pursuing you, coming at you.
I see what you're going. I see what you're saying. I mean, I'm thinking of it in the sense of even before making the initial contact, would I pull my weapon out? You know what I'm saying? In this case, I don't think that officer, now that I'm looking at the video, I don't think he pulled his weapon out until the kids started to back away, you know? So Blackjack, I see you join us on the show. Tone, I hope you're still with us. Having a little bit of
hey, go ahead.
Go ahead, Corey. Can you hear me? Hey, Tony, if you can hear me, give me a little thumbs up or something on the notes. I see your comment down there. I see Corey, but I don't hear him. We having some technical difficulties, folks. But Tone, you say if the officers previously had the plate number that leads them back to the residence, why didn't they get a warrant and serve him at home? True. And my guess, Tone, is they probably wouldn't have been able to even get a warrant because the officer would have to show that he is identifying the driver as the same person who fled the scene from him the week before. So, getting a warrant, yeah, you could do that. But I think this could have been handled much differently, even if the kid took off. You don't want to get into a vehicle pursuit again. I understand that. But if that's what happens, that's what happens. So once the kid took off, you got a vehicle pursuit. Well, right then and there, you know that this person is getting ready to be arrested. So there's nothing up in the air as far as you trying to figure out if this is the same kid that you got into a pursuit with the week before. You know what I'm saying? You already got him on a arrest on him right here because he took off from you right here. He backed up and drove way out the parking lot. So even if you didn't shoot him, you can get in your car and now the pursuit is on. You see what I'm saying? Until you're able to call it off for whatever reasons, because maybe it's too dangerous or something like that. Okay. But the kid possibly would have still been alive, assuming that the vehicle pursuit went okay. You know what I'm saying?
Can you hear me, Mike?
I can hear you now, Corey.
Right.
But my thing is, yeah, you're right, Tone. They had the plate number. I mean, you had information about the car at least to where you could easily try to. Well, I can't say easily because it's my understanding the plate didn't match the car. That plate did not belong to the car. So you had a license plate, but he could have taken that plate off once he got down the road. And now you just got a plate that's separate from the car that it was on. So we don't really know what license plate was supposed to be on that car. You know what I'm saying? But before all of that, the right way to handle this would have been to wait for a cover unit, or if you need to get into a pursuit, well, then that's what happens. You're going to get into a pursuit. I did not see any incidents here where deadly force should have been used at that moment. You know what I'm saying? At that moment with this kid just backing out and driving off, trying to flee, you did not have enough information to even think that this kid was going to hurt anybody else later on down the line. You know what I'm saying? And I only say that because, Corey, how you got the whole fleeing felon deal. If you feel somebody, a guy is going to drive off and go shoot up the park, well, then you can use deadly force to stop him from driving off if that's what it takes, as long as you have articulable facts that support you thought he was going to go and hurt someone else. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, for me, I don't think this is something that I would have done. As a matter of fact, I know I wouldn't have done. We're not trying to sit here and Monday morning quarterback what this officer did. Obviously, this is a learning lesson for others, and to give our viewers the insight of the officer's mindset. To me, it was definitely a lack of training. Maybe he was. I would be questioning, how he was on his FTO phase, Mike. Should he have been cut loose so early? I like to know what their FTO program was like. And for our viewers, FTO is just your field training officer. Once you complete the academy, you're assigned to a veteran officer for a certain amount of weeks or months, and they supervise you and go over policy and the do's and don'ts of being a police officer. It's just a continuation of your training from the academy. I was a field training officer for our area office. And, a lot of times, even after I signed off on their paperwork that they were good to go, our supervisors always made it a point for them to be on our same schedule, my same work schedule. So I heard all the calls that they were going on, and guess who showed up to all their calls? Me, right? Because if he gets into something, it's going to be a direct reflection on me, on my training capability. So for, I think, maybe a couple months or so after they were cut loose after FTO, they had them shadow my schedule. And so I was able to still, hey, what do you do about this? Hey, make sure you do this. I was able to still watch them to make sure they were still in compliance, or if they had questions, I was always accessible to them. So I would be looking at all these things like, okay, so what prompted him to want to go do this? Did he fear for himself? And then if he did, I want to know, well, what part of this did he feel threatened? Because clearly, that's something you were definitely trained on in the academy, is not to do that. You need to assess the situation. You've already identified that he did not have a weapon on him. So we talked about last week, Mike, escalation of force, right?
Yeah.
Number one being the presence, right? You're in the uniform today, displaying the badge of authority, right? That's number one, right? And two, it escalates so fast, okay, he saw that he didn't have it, because we all saw it that the kid didn't have it, right? Especially after he dropped the cheeseburger and put both his hands on the steering wheel. And at that point, I would have went hands on and tried to get him in a wrist lock real quick and got him out that car so he couldn't. And if he still got away, then like you said, let him go. I have his information. Now I've identified the driver. And now we do police work and track down the vehicle and the registered owner of the vehicle. To open fire like that, I will say I totally 100% agree with the department. I think it was a day or 2 days later he was fired.
Fired and then arrested.
Fired and then arrested for assault. And I left my notebook upstairs.
Some charges.
It was some, but he was. One thing we failed to mention, Mike, there was also a passenger in that vehicle.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, was not harmed, and I think it was a female. She was not harmed in this incident. So, this is definitely a black eye on police, and it's sad because just last night we lost 2 more police officers that were ambushed.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right?
Domestic violence. My wife was telling me about that a minute ago.
Yeah. So
it was a trumped up domestic violence call that they thought they were going to, and ended up being ambushed. Yeah.
Good question, Tone. Do the FTOs, field training officers, have a training program? Yes. I had to go back up to our training command headquarters in Richmond. I think it was about a week. Yeah, about a week long, I think it was. We went through training on it. Basically learned all the forms we had to fill out and what is expected of the FTO, right? And what is expected of the trainee and what they are able to do while they're out there. And pretty much you were a hawk. you were trained. You need to be a hawk, and you need to be in their back pocket over them. And even still, now here's the thing: they're sworn officers. They can uphold the law. They're able to arrest people. But however, you still, while they're in an FTO, if you were with me, you weren't making no approaches to any vehicles unless I told you to. For example, I tell you about the one I had. They got the drug dealer with the guns and all the drugs. At that time, I told my trainee to stand back. I said, "You're not going to do this. I'm going to do this one." And lo and behold, the guy had a gun right at his feet. And had I let this young fella, and it was Devin, the guy we had on our show before.
Yeah.
If I had let him, now I know he wouldn't have done it, but being young and inexperienced like that, letting him go up to the car like that, if he had pulled his gun and shot that individual, it's gonna, he would be at fault, but it's also gonna fall on me because I was his FTO. You see, so there is training, and believe it or not, Tone, FTOs are looked at like the cream of the crop. Like
Yeah,
that's
FTOs are veteran officers
Yeah.
that have been around long enough to know the ins and outs and the ropes of the job. Because and Corey, you know this, what you learn in the academy is one thing, but what you learn out there in real life on real streets dealing with real people is a whole nother thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the FTO is there to monitor you, train you, advise you, all of the above on what you should and shouldn't do, how you should react and how you shouldn't react. Now, our FTO training program was 3 months. You got the academy, and then for 3 months you were assigned an FTO, a field training officer. Now you were assigned 3 field training officers, ideally, one for every month of the program, and each of the month was a different phase. You know what I'm saying? And then once you've completed the FTO program, assuming you did complete the FTO program and didn't get booted out, just because you passed the academy does not guarantee you're gonna be a successful cop. You know what I'm saying? You got to pass through that FTO program too, which is department specific for what kind of activity is going on in the area that you're working, and so forth. And now once you pass that, then you also had a 12-month probationary period, which means they can let you go for any and everything, anything they want. You know what I'm saying? And that's for a 12-month period in our department after the 3-month FTO program. You know what I'm saying? So, it's not some quick, blow through process, Tone, to finally be a cop. But in addition, keep in mind, in addition to all that technical training and all of that stuff that goes on in FTO program and your probationary period, you still have to be the right kind of person to make the right kind of decisions at the right time. You know what I'm saying? Now, there's many right decisions, right, Corey? Many decisions that are right, but there's very few of them are wrong. And that we all know the wrong ones. And you know what I'm saying? In this situation, this cop, that was a wrong decision. And he should have known that, no, this is not a circumstance for me to be firing off rounds at this fleeing driver.
And sad thing is, I think this young man is from what I understand is on life support. I read before we started the show that he is still unresponsive, still on life support, but his blood oxygen levels were a lot better yesterday. So that's good. So as of right now, he's I'm talking about the police officer now. As of right now, the officer is out on $100,000 bond for each one, so $200,000. So he had 2 counts, so $100,000 for each count. So he's out on bond. So if anything happens to this kid, he takes turn for where you can best believe they're gonna hit him with some murder charges, and rightfully so. I mean, this is why I say, being a police officer is not something you just wake up and say, I'm gonna drive down to the police station and apply for a police officer. No, this is something that for me it was always in me. It is who I am. And so it's got to be your destiny. It's got to be that calling. Just like being a minister, you can't just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm gonna go be go to ministry school to be a preacher." Now you weren't called by God to get in the pulpit and lead His people. Same thing for being a cop. I mean, I think you got to be. It's a calling. You got to be right to be in that uniform.
You definitely got to be the type of person with the kind of head with a head of reason. You know what I'm saying?
You have to be.
You got to have a head of reason.
Yeah.
You got to be able to. Now, I've always said there are a lot of police shootings that citizens may not understand and agree with because they don't have the training, they don't have the same perceptions. They're not in an environment where they are constantly training for these incidents or training to be in a situation where you might have to make a decision to use deadly force. They're not in that kind of environment routine. You know what I'm saying? Living their daily lives, the average citizens don't understand what goes into those kinds of decisions. You know what I'm saying? And I'm always one to say there are a lot of police shootings that Corey, you and I could see. Well, yeah, that does sound reasonable to me. You see what I'm saying? That he would use deadly force in that situation because I could see a reasonable officer perceiving this threat or perceiving that threat. You see what I'm saying? But there are some where you look at it and you say, if I was in that situation, I don't see anything that would cause me to respond that way. You see what I'm saying?
Case in point, this situation here.
This situation here.
I mean,
there's nothing here that showed me that I would use that type of action.
What like we always say, and you just said, what would a reasonable officer do? A reasonable officer would just been like, hey, all right, dude, you pulling out, you're not a threat. I'm gonna run back to my car, get my car, I'm gonna pursue you, or I'm gonna call it in on the radio. Hey, he's fleeing, he's headed eastbound on whatever street, and let that officer who's en route to me continue on. And I get in my car and I start pursuing. But to pull the weapon out at that, and I pull my weapon out a lot.
Sure.
But like I said before, I've thank God that I never had to pull the trigger. Right. But there was always instances where it's like, okay, this is not right. When that hair on the back of your neck stands up, and he used to tell us that in the academy all the time. When you know it's going south, when that hair on the back of your neck stands up, it's going down. And 9 times out of 10, it was going down. You were getting ready to go hands on with somebody, or you had to pull your weapon, because that's the last thing I ever wanted to do was have to pull my weapon out.
And this situation, this should not have been one of those circumstances. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100. But that's the thing. It's like, what was he thinking? He wasn't thinking as a reasonable officer. So don't sit here and tell me, well, you felt threatened. There was no threat. Him driving off away from you is not a threat. Okay, you can say you got
it's
hit
not
by
like
a car
you were
door.
trying to stop a fleeing murder suspect, or not to your knowledge. It wasn't
not
anything,
a felony in progress.
Right. It wasn't a felony in progress. You could not say that the kid was driving away because he was getting ready to go shoot up the school or shoot up the park or the club. You can't even say that. You see what I'm saying?
No, there's nothing to articulate. You can't even if you try to say, all right, the only reason why you got hit by the door because you failed to move out the way.
Right.
That's not.
I don't mean to laugh, folks. It's not a laughing matter, but still, you're right. It's because you didn't move out the way.
Right. And you should have you're supposed to make every effort to get out of the way, so to prevent you from having to discharge your weapon. Right? If you can get out the way, that go ahead.
No, but the other side of that coin, folks. Once again, we always say on here, Corey, you don't know what kind of officer you are going to come across. So above all, if you find yourself in that situation and the officer runs up on you, opens your door and say, I need you to get out of the car, just get out of the car. Don't try to take off and run off on you, because you don't know if what you are dealing with is a reasonable officer. You don't have enough articulable facts either to be in that officer's head and to know whether or not he is going to respond this way or some other way. You see what I'm saying? So that's the other side.
That's key. Right. That's key. It's like, not at no point in this are we blaming the young man. I mean,
not at all.
Yeah, I can clearly see why he acted this way, and that's a problem, right? We don't need the youth to assume that, okay, well, this happened to little Johnny, so my interaction with law enforcement is going to be the same way. No, it's not. If you learn to stay calm, right, comply, answer questions, listen, and move on, like you said, Mike, like we always say, when you are in compliance, you're making it harder for that officer to do anything to you. Now, that doesn't say he's not going to do anything, but you're going to make it harder because it's kind of hard for me to do something to you if you're doing what I'm asking you to do, right?
Right.
If I ask you to sit down, you sit down. Well, yeah, I can't throw you down now because you're already sitting down, right? You're taking that ammo away from that officer by staying calm, complying, and answering questions, and listening, so that you can move on. And like we say, Mike, moving on is leaving the scene or you going to jail. But at the end of it all, you're still alive. You're still able to right and able to go to court and argue your case. And that's the bottom line.
And
I wish
especially don't do anything so fast that it causes
right.
that officer now to have to make a quick, fast decision, which might be the wrong one. Might be the wrong one.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Which could have been the case here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was a wrong decision made
acting
because
that
he was making
way.
it fast.
Right. I mean, you there's nothing that this guy can do to articulate why he did what he did. There is nothing. My years on the force and my 21 years in the military and all the training, weapons trainings I've been through, there's nothing that you can say to articulate that this was justifiable in no way, shape, or form.
No.
He was wrong, and he will go to jail. Justice will be served for this young man, and rightfully so. And I wish him well. I hope he doesn't have a negative attitude towards all police. And I hope he's able to forgive this police officer. He's gonna have to have a lot of healing, physically and mentally. This young man is gonna have to go through. But it's wrong, and it's a black eye on police, and it's a dangerous job, right? And you got to be able to make that decision at a moment's notice whether you're going to use deadly force or not, and when is it authorized, right? In this situation, it was not authorized.
No, I don't see anything
sorry.
that authorizes it. You know what I'm saying? And just folks, so you know, deadly force when it's authorized. I mean, even most department policies are very. You definitely have to have a fear of life, a fear of that kind of safety, if you will, for lack of better words, that your life is in jeopardy or somebody else's life is in jeopardy. That is when you use it. But that is still a wide open thing. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to have a department policy that says if that driver pulls a gun out on you, you're supposed to return and shoot him back. It's not going to be that detailed. You see what I'm saying? Those are the things that are going to be left up for the officer's perception and his or her decision making based on that perception at that moment. You see what I'm saying? And that's why they leave it that way, because it's not simple black and white most of the time. You see what I'm saying? It's a gray area, and you got to have articulable facts that justify why you decide to use that deadly force. You see why you decide to pull that trigger. And it better not be, well, he was just running away. You better have a whole lot more than he was just running away or he was driving away. Right. I can tell you that. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But you
and that goes the same way. And that would go the same way if they were trying to flee on foot.
Sure.
And you just can't just start shooting because they decided to just take off running. And they have no weapon. You can't do that, and especially, the vehicle too. You just can't do this. So again, and if I were him, now I would go into court for this. Now, rightfully so, he's gonna plead, not guilty. of course, and rightfully so. And that's what you should do when you go to court. His attorneys are going to advise him on what he needs to do. But I can see him going to jail in this one.
Yeah, I can see him doing some time on this
I
one.
there's
If that kid ends up dying, probably.
oh, it's a
You
wrap.
know what I'm saying?
It's a
So,
wrap, and I'm just shocked it hadn't gotten more coverage than it did. Um, it's sad. So let us know what you think, folks. Obviously, I think we're all on the same page here that the officer was definitely in the wrong. There's no way around it. But if you like the content of this video, you found it valuable, let us know in the comments below. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up tonight. And please like and share this out. And Mike, your final words.
no, everybody, thanks for joining us. Blackjack, Tone, D. Lamont, Stacy, appreciate you guys joining us, making them comments. We love those comments and questions, and different viewpoints of this. That's one of the advantages of doing this show live, so you guys can chime in and make some comments so we can discuss stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. You guys have a good weekend.
Yeah, have a great weekend. And we'll see y'all next week with another video. And if you like for us to discuss something, it doesn't necessarily have to be a shooting, but anything law enforcement you want to gain our insight on something, hit us up on Facebook. We're both on Facebook at Corey Taylor and Michael Bradley. Just hit us up, drop us a question, and we'll get it on the air. And matter of fact, we'll get you on the air to discuss something. So again, thank y'all for joining us. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out and show us some love. And we'll see y'all next week. Peace. Hey, no problem, Tone. Tone says, thank y'all for being so open-minded on both sides.
Oh, okay. All right. Tone always be tuning in, don't it?
Yeah, he do.
We see you, Tone. I appreciate that.
Do.
We appreciate that, man. We love the comments
yes,
and the shows. And you one of the faithfuls from day one. You know what I'm saying? We get you on that.